Language development. Terminology used as it relates to the age categories and the age ranges of children is what we'll explore first so that there's a clear understanding as to what happens during the developmental stages and ages of toddlers and preschoolers. So, toddlers are referred to as 18 months to 30 months or 1.5 to 2.5. Preschoolers are referred to 30 months to 5 years or 2.5 to 5 years. Toddlers are considered children that are 18 months or over, but they're younger than 30 months. And preschoolers are considered children that are 30 months or older, but they are younger than 6 years old. These are some of the age categories and age ranges as outlined in the Child Care and Early Years Act, which is the law that governs licensed childcare in Ontario. It's important to know these age categories and these age ranges because this is what informs the different care, supervision, and developmental needs of children in their early years of development. When we start to look at the biological foundations of language, we look at two distinct areas in the brain, the Broca and the Wernicke area of the brain. They are both located in the left hemisphere or the left side of the brain, and they are both responsible for two significant functions of language. The Broca area is responsible for the production of language, and the Wernicke area is responsible for comprehension of language. Production and comprehension of language is also described as expressive and receptive language. Expressive language is the language that children use, and receptive language is the language that children understand. With expressive language, there are many milestones that happen during the first stages of life. The child has their first word by 12 months, and between the age of 1.5 or 2.5, children begin to combine words. So this would be the toddler age range or age category. By 2.5, children can say approximately 200 words, and between 2.5 and 5, which is the preschool age, children can say approximately 10,000 words. As we begin to explore the theories of language development, we will start with Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky had two different thoughts. One was the language acquisition device, and the other was the universal grammar. The concept of the language acquisition device was that humans are born with this innate ability to understand language, acquire language without any formal instruction. And the universal grammar refers to this concept that all humans have a universal structure and set of rules for language that is understood innately. Jean Piaget's theory of assimilation and accommodation can be explored through the lens of language development by looking at how we fit information into existing knowledge, which is equilibrium, and how we adjust for new information, which is disequilibrium. When we have existing knowledge, we may understand cars, what cars are, or what trucks are. A child may look at a car and say car, car, look at a truck and be able to identify a truck, but then see a motorcycle and decide that they were going to either call it a car or a truck, which would be assimilation based on their existing knowledge. They don't yet know what the motorcycle is, and they do not have a place to put it. When a child accommodates, they begin to build a new, what is called schema or space for their new knowledge, which would house motorcycles. So when a child accommodates and now has a space and the words and the concept of a motorcycle, when they see a car, they can place it in the car schema. When they see a truck, they can place it in the truck schema. And now when they see a motorcycle, they would place it in the motorcycle schema. If the child saw a bus, this process would start again because the child would in turn call the bus a car, truck, or motorcycle. Which is assimilation. Once they've understood that the bus is a different type of vehicle and has a different word, the process of accommodation would be implemented, and they would have to have a new schema or a new area or place to put their idea and a new category for bus. Lev Vygotsky talked about a concept of the zone of proximal development. This concept was understanding the difference between what a child could do on their own and what they could do with assistance. Lev Vygotsky also talked about scaffolding, and this is how you adjust, like a scaffold, adjusting to different levels. You adjust the approach that you provide children in this area where they can't quite do it on their own or have not grasped the concept of doing it on their own, but they may be able to do it with your support. So this is where the concept of scaffolding supports dialogue so that you can speak to the child and provide instructions to support them between that zone where they're unable to do it on their own. Some approaches to supporting language would include echoing, repeating what the child says, expanding, restating what they're saying in a more sophisticated or grammatically correct manner, labeling, identifying different objects around children, or recasting, elaborating on what the child is saying. B.F. Skinner's concept of operant conditioning was mainly completed on animals. And in that time, animals were considered to be a good source of experiments so that they could continue their studies on humans. At the time, seeming more ethical to do some studies with animals rather than directly with humans, as we'll see later on when we explore more concepts and more theories. With operant conditioning, there was a reward and a punishment element to this experiment, where a rat in this case would respond to touching a pallet to get a pellet. So they would touch the lever to get a pellet, and if they stopped, they would be shocked. So they began to learn that once they touched the lever, they would get a pellet, and if they didn't, they would be shocked. So this would be the concept of reward and punishment. As it relates to language, a reward might be a child saying a word such as milk and realizing their caregiver will come over and give them milk, or, bear, and then the caregiver comes over and gives them the bear, or if they're able to form complete sentences, asking for what they want or saying what they don't want, and having a reward would be based on what they desired as the outcome. Punishment would be saying something and then not receiving what they wanted, or having a receptive or expressive language about something that they desire and not getting that. So that would teach them possibly not to ask in that way or not to continue that same behavior because it's not getting the desired response. Milestones. There are many milestones in language, and if we look at them from newborn to where we are discussing in our class, preschool age, 2.5 to 6, we see that there are many stages that lead us to our preschool stage and helped develop and get us to the preschool stage. So there starts with crying, then there's the cooing, babbling, imitating sounds, first words, being able to put two words together, and then ultimately being able to form sentences and complete thoughts. For 3 to 5, as we have illustrated, they can follow instructions, they can name familiar objects, they understand words, they begin to learn the most important first word for them in terms of language and print would be their names and the letters, the first letter of their name, and then ultimately the remaining letters of their names. As they move to 4 and 5, which is an overlap with the kindergarten age range, they begin to understand the rules of grammar. They can tell stories. They may even know their last name. They speak clearly. They know how to articulate themselves. And they may even know their address. With early speech, you have children that sometimes make vocabulary errors where they have underextension where they're calling, they're looking at a bear and they're thinking that bear only means their specific bear, or they have overextension where they talked about a car and the car means car, bus, truck, motorcycle, as we spoke about earlier. So with assimilation and accommodation, or they have overregulation where they're adding S's or different letters to words to make them plural, even though that is not the grammatically correct way to say mice and to say mouses instead. There are different individualities that happen in terms of language style as children grow up. We have referential style where they use language to label objects, that expressive style where they are talking. And much of language depends on a child's personality, their environment, culture, the number of words and the amount of words they hear, the amount of print that they see, the amount of conversations that they hear, whether it's in their native tongue or in other languages. And it also has a big development on their physical temperament and their upbringing as well. One of the developmental issues or debates is nature versus nurture. So is language development biologically based, meaning nature, we're born with it? All children around the world reach milestones at relatively the same time, developmentally and typically in the same order. But the other question is language development environmentally based? Language development is viewed as a process that is reinforced and imitated by others. So what is your thoughts? Is language development biologically based or is it environmentally based?